Been thinking about starting a comic book collection? I've been there. And in today's video, I'm going to share you my top 5 tips that helped me get started with my comic book collection. I'm also going to share with you along the way examples of books that I've picked up. So you're going to want to stick around to the end of the video and not want to miss a thing. Let's get started with the honorable mention. Defining a purpose for your collection. That's something that I did for myself that I really thought was beneficial when I started my collecting journey. And that was really to define the purpose of my collection in the first place. Was I just buying books to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, because my friends were buying books? Was it because that I, really loved the stories and wanted to become an avid reader of comics? Was it because I really loved the characters and wanted to collect their first appearances? Like this first appearance of Goku. Was it really to invest in comics and buy and hold popular books long term to eventually sell for profit? Like this giant size X-Men #1, the first appearance of the new X-Men team. These are all questions that I had to ask myself, and ultimately what I decided is I don't want to be a flipper, I don't want to be a speculator. I do want to read comics, and I really want to enjoy them, so I really want to buy books that I want to hold long term, and that I don't really have any intention of selling. So I buy first appearance keys, for the most part, as far as my graded collection, and I buy raw comic books of themes and stories that I love, like Walt Disney. So, yeah, that's something that really, again, made my hobby most enjoyable for me, my collection the most enjoyable for me, is really giving it a purpose. What do you want to accomplish? That will really help you guide you on your collecting journey, just like it did me. Number 5, making a budget. Now, this is something that I know is painful, not enjoyable. We all want to be able to afford all the books that we want to buy, and we don't really want to have to think about their cost. But unfortunately, comic book collecting can be very expensive, and you can go through your budget very quickly. So that's something that I decided very early on, that I wanted to set a budget that I didn't want to go over. And not only did I set a budget overall, as far as just like a dollar amount I wanted to spend on the books in total, I also set a dollar amount that I wanted to spend per book. So I didn't want to go over $6,000 on any one particular book. And case in point was Tales to Astonish 13. This comic was exactly $6,000 I purchased this for. This is the first appearance of Groot, so a big Silver Age key. For all of you Guardians of the Galaxy lovers, yeah, Groot looks a lot different in the movies than he ever did in the comic books. But yeah, super cool comic. And this is an example of when I did stick to my budget and I was very happy with this purchase. Whether your budget is a dollar amount, maybe it's a certain amount per paycheck or per month that you're willing to spend on books. Maybe it's a percentage of your net worth. Or maybe, you want to do your collection no more than $1,000. Whatever it is, I really recommend that you make a budget and you stick to it. And I know a lot of you who've seen my other video are like, but Morgan, your biggest mistakes are like going over budget. Yeah, that's in this video here. Yeah, I'm guilty of that. But I find it much more enjoyable and much better when I do stick to my budget rather than going over budget for my books. And sticking to budget is something that makes this hobby more enjoyable, because when I do stick to my budget, which is most of the time, I really enjoy it because I can get more books in the long run. Also, it spreads out my purchases more, so I don't buy a ton of books all at once and then, go for long periods of time where I'm not buying any new comics. So yeah, even if it's $50 a month or $50 every 2 weeks or $100 a month, maybe your whole collection is $20,000. Whatever it is comfortable for you, make sure you set your budget. And again, I would recommend maybe thinking about your budget as a whole collection and also per book. It definitely helped me out when I got started with my collection. Number 4, pre-selecting your books. Now, this might sound pretty crazy, but yeah, you definitely want to actually write down the books you want before you buy them. This really helps you from impulse buying books that you don't really care about in the long run. And that was something, again, the mistakes that I made when I first started collecting was I impulse bought books I didn't really care about. And that is something that I wouldn't recommend you do, because it keeps you from buying the books you really want. So very early on, I realized I really need to write down the books I really want to go after. So I, in an Excel spreadsheet, just started putting the comics that I potentially wanted to go after. And I started whittling them down to like, what do I really care about the most and what are a priority? So I actually I have 3 separate sheets where I have like priority 1 comics, priority 2 comics, priority 3 comics, so that I know which comics not only do I want the most, I know what to focus on first. So it might be tempting when that, Man of Steel 18 comes around, that first appearance of Doomsday, that I want to buy. But that's really in my priority 3 list. So that's money that could be tied up for getting a priority 1 book, maybe like a higher grade Wonder Woman 6 than I have, that, that I really want to go after and really want to have in the long term. So things that you want to think about as far as selecting books, maybe characters you care about, maybe it's runs, maybe it's first appearance keys. Like I said, I really decided early on that I want to go after first appearance keys with my graded comic book collection. So I started with buying books that I loved as a kid and stuff that I grew up with, which I think is a great place to start. So I was a kid of the 80s and the 90s, and Venom, huge, biggest Spider-Man villain, in my opinion, in that time. And I just loved Venom. I loved the character. You see him in the movies, you see him in the video games, TV show. And this is Amazing Spider-Man number 300. This is the first appearance of Venom. This is in a 9.4 newsstand. I always like to collect newsstand variants if there is an option between newsstand and direct, because in general, they're a little bit harder to come by in higher grades. And I just like that this was actually on a newsstand, somewhere. I just like the idea of that. So yeah, big first appearance key. Obviously, there's a lot of copies of this book on the census, thousands and thousands of copies. But again, great cover, great character. I love Spider-Man. So yeah, selecting your comics, make sure to put them in a priority list and writing them down so that you know not to spend money on books you don't care about and really go after the stuff you love. That's something that I would do for sure. Number 3, deciding condition. This is something that when you're not collecting comic books or you haven't collected comic books before, like in my experience, I didn't really think about this. I just thought about collecting books and just buying whatever I liked, and didn't really think about, maybe I should go after books in different grade levels. And when I first started collecting, I realized very early I wanted to go after grades that were specific based on the age of the book, because I really wanted nice presenting copies. When you're buying graded books like this Wonder Woman number 9 from the Golden Age, the first appearance of Giganta, another first appearance key, gotta love Wonder Woman villains. I wanted books, because I knew I was buying these graded books for mainly display and enjoyment, that I wanted to buy books that displayed very well. So I decided that I wanted to buy certain grade levels and not below that. For example, in the Golden Age, I want 4.0 or better as far as CGC graded books go. I also want my Golden Age books to be off-white pages or better. So no cream to off-white, no brittle pages, anything like that. And is that arbitrary? Absolutely. But again, that was something that you think about, because at first, when I very first couple books, I didn't really think about the condition. And so I just started buying a hodgepodge of different grades, and it didn't display nearly as much as well as I wanted it to. And I also just didn't feel as good with my collection when you have a 1.8, 4.0, 8.0, 6.0. It was just all over the place. There was no rhyme or reason. Didn't make me feel good about my collection. So now having that system, it really helps me with my books, knowing what books I want to go after, what condition I want to go after. And this is also why I put the budget before the condition. Is your budget's going to help determine what kind of condition you're going to get these books graded in. So yeah, definitely make sure to do the budget first. But the other benefit to me of deciding what kind of grade or condition the book that you want would be is that you can be more selective in the book that you find. So you don't have to feel the pressure. Like when you see a copy of a Wonder Woman 9, I got to buy it. And this is the time I have to buy it, regardless of the grade. Like having that grade there makes it so that you can be more patient. And to me, a lot of the thrill is the hunt and finding the book. So it makes it more fun because it takes a little bit longer to find the book, but you can be more selective and you don't have to try to buy everything all at once. The number 2 tip is to do pricing research. Now, pricing research is very important, not only because when you're new, you don't really know what books what they're worth, and you can tend to overpay. Another mistake you want to avoid. But also, you want to make sure that you do get great deals and maybe get books for under market value. That way your budget stretches further and you can buy as many books as you possibly can within the budget that you've already outlined. So recommendations that I have, or subscriptions that I have of pricing guides, I have two of them. Number one is going to be Go Collect, and number two is GPA Analysis. Both of them have free versions that you can use. I don't think that they're that comprehensive for free, so I pay like a $9 subscription fee for each one of them per month. And I think it's well worth it because I've literally saved thousands and thousands of dollars with those pricing services. So paying $9 a month, well worth it. And the reason that I go with those is that they track just a wide variety of sales across all kinds of different platforms. If you're not looking for a paid for like pricing guide, one of my best resources would be eBay sold listings. Now, the downside of eBay sold listings is that you aren't always sure if those sales are legitimate. So you definitely want to verify if those sales are 100% accurate. But the upside is eBay, it's free, and there are so many listings that end every single day. So especially with popular books or books that there are a lot of copies of, you can get a good idea of the fair market value of those books through eBay. The other thing I would recommend is keeping track on your own. So if you don't know the resource Comic Link, or the auction site / comic sales site Comic Link, it's one of my top 5 favorite places to buy comic books, which you can see that video here. Comic Link is great. Great place to buy books. They don't report their data though to like GPA Analysis or Go Collect. So what I like to do is watch that website, and in my Excel spreadsheet where I have the books I'm going after, I will actually watch and figure out what the price went for, what those books went for, and just plug it into my Excel spreadsheet. So I start tracking those prices for myself. So definitely something you should do when you're first starting out is pricing research, and that's something that I did with this book right here. This is All-Star Comics number 37. This is one of my personal favorite books from the Golden Age, because this is actually the first appearance of the Injustice Society, which is the first super villain team in comics. So pretty darn cool. This is in a CGC 5.5 and it's off-white to white pages. And when I bought this book, I had seen on my pricing guides like GPA Analysis that 5.5 had recently gone for $1,350. So I knew that that was about the fair price value for this book. And when I bought this book, I ended up purchasing it for $1,300. So basically a little bit under fair market value, but yeah, right at fair market value essentially. So that really helped me decide what I should pay for this book. And it also helps you know like limits. So we talked about staying within budget. If you know, those pricing guides will help you get a rough idea of what your collection should cost you, or what the maximum you should pay for your books. Makes collecting a whole lot easier. So yeah, I would definitely recommend doing pricing research. Now, before we get to number 1, make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you're eligible for giveaways like this picture of Red Sonja signed by Gail Simone. We're giving this away when we hit 1,000 subscribers, which shouldn't be too long. Also, let me know down in the comments what you think. Number 1, actually buying your first comic book. I know it sounds crazy, sounds obvious, but it's so easy, and I was guilty of it, of like theory crafting, just thinking about buying comics for so long before ever pulling the trigger. I mentioned in another video, I started looking at comic book collecting a decade before I actually started comic book collecting, and I didn't actually pull the trigger. I just thought about it, and the more I thought about it, and I put it off, and it became on the back burner. I didn't actually do any of these tips, like pricing research, making a budget, selecting comics. I just thought, it'd be a great idea to do someday. And that's a decision I definitely regret. So pull the trigger, buy a book. Not only is it extremely enjoyable, you'll never know how much fun it is to buy your first comic book until you do, but there's all kinds of benefits you don't realize about buying your comics that you will find out after you start purchasing them. And that is what a great community comic book collectors are. I mean, this is phenomenal. There is a reason I made a YouTube channel, and I've been trying to share it with everybody, is because the people I meet by and large are just phenomenal people. The hobby's a ton of fun. I love these characters. I love these books, displaying them, talking about them, sharing them with family and friends. It's all been fantastic. Also, going to Comic Cons. You'll be surprised how many Comic Cons you start going to when you purchase comic books. Not only that, though, the knowledge and the experience you get about, finding good deals, how to price comic books, really learning what is important to me, what's not important to me. Maybe I modify what kind of condition I really want in books. Maybe I don't care. I want entry level books so that I can get more of them. Maybe I want to increase the grades that I get so that I have better presenting copies. Maybe I don't want graded books and I want to stick with raw so I can read the stories. On and on. I'll tell you that my comic book collecting journey has changed throughout the experience. So definitely the more you buy, the more you learn. And the book that I started out with my collecting journey is this book right here. This is Marvel Superheroes number 18. This is the first appearance of Guardians of the Galaxy. I love this book. I'm never going to sell it. This is in a CGC 6.5 off-white to white. The reason I bought this first is because Guardians of the Galaxy, that movie changed my life as far as the MCU. I was not into the MCU before then, and that movie totally changed things for me. Chris Pratt was hilarious. Jim Gunn did such a great job. I cannot describe how much I loved that movie. So the first book I knew I had to go after was first appearance of the Guardians. And as you can see, CGC 6.5 off-white to white. This is a Silver Age key, first appearance key. So I want to at least be a 6.0 off-white to white or better pages. And this fits the bill. So I would encourage every single one of you, if you're looking to get into comic book collecting, definitely follow these 5 tips. They at least were helpful to me. The biggest one is go out and buy your first book. Now that you've learned all about these tips, you want to catch this next video right here.